putting the X in success. Electric cars, the hype, the money, the truth, Employer Edition, with Nat Parkin, Client Services Manager and CSR Lead at Pluxee UK, and Ali Argall, Business Development and Client Retention Director at Tusker.
Welcome to our podcast, Electric Cars, the hype, the money, the truth. I'm Natalie Parkin, Client Services Manager and CSR Lead at Pluxee UK, and I'm joined by a key Pluxee partner, Ali Argall, Business Development and Retention Director from Tusker Salary Sacrifice Cars. Thanks for joining us. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm Ali Argall, as you mentioned. Work for Tusker. I've been with Tusker for just coming up to 21 years. And
wow.
I know how time flies. From our perspective, originally a traditional leasing fleet management company. And then we moved to operating salary sacrifice car benefit schemes in 2008.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about how our partnership, so Tusker's partnership with Pluxee?
Yeah, so Pluxee were actually, in terms of your origins, really early adopters of the salary sacrifice car benefit scheme. We started working with Pluxee back in 2012. So actually, even in that environment, very early adopters recognising the core benefits of operating a salary sacrifice car scheme.
And obviously, our partnership with Tusker is one that we are especially proud of. So Tusker's commitment to eco-friendly practices, like making electric vehicles more accessible through salary sacrifice, perfectly, obviously, complements our own values. So partnership aligns with Pluxee's ethos by allowing to offer employee benefits that aren't just perks, but also contribute to greener, more sustainable future. Of course, that's become one of the most important things at the moment and going forward. And ultimately, it helps us to support organisations to become the socially conscious employers of choice.
Absolutely. I think going back to 2008, that green agenda probably wasn't number one on people's wish list, or I should say organisations' wish list. But today, without a doubt, the top three objectives that they're looking to achieve 100% include those CSR and ESG targets and focus.
And I think it's about aligning rewards, benefits, but with the responsibility and making sure what we provide does resonate with what the workforce is wanting nowadays.
100%. I mean, when looking at a valuable benefit, looking at a big ticket, what's going to make a really big difference for those employees, not just from a financial perspective, but actual financial well-being, as well as looking at something that is really relevant to them when you look at how many people need a car.
And there's also something new to share that I'm personally very excited about, is pre-loved cars, but we will hear more about that shortly. Before we begin, Ali, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you some quick fire questions. So,
okay,
what is the most popular electric car on the scheme to drive and why?
So currently, and of course things move and shake around, but currently it's the Tesla Model Y.
Of course.
That features most. And I guess, I mean, Elon,
Yeah.
he's done a good job.
Yeah.
It is the iPhone, I guess, of the automotive industry. And the key thing here about Tesla was that they were early to market. The super fast chargers have made it so convenient, and you get a range of more than 300 miles. So add all those together, new technology, kind of a bit quirky, a bit different, and convenience, it was bound to be well received.
Might be one day that we see you offering the robots. But they've just
well, I'm up for self-drive if I could do it. How convenient.
So another question. How many electric cars are there on the road today?
So increasing at a really lovely rapid rate. So looking at, I think we hit the million electric cars on the road back in March this year. We're looking at about 1.3 million now. So really seeing that increase and that adoption.
There's lots of noise in the media.
Always.
Well, yeah, always. We hear EV is obviously strong, or then you might hear that there are some negatives. What's your kind of view on this?
Without a doubt, it is strong. The government's Road to Zero strategy that has incentivised the adoption of pure electric vehicles, or actually low emission vehicles to some extent, so including plug-in hybrids there. And we have seen at Tusker, 85% of our fleet is pure electric vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, sort of when we start looking in the whys, it'll become apparent that it, from a incentivized position, it makes amazing good sense.
So my final quickfire question is, what was the first modern day electric car?
So we think of electric cars being very modern, but actually 1838 is recorded as the first electric vehicle. But when we talk modern, we're talking 2014 would have been sort of what we see with electric vehicles today, and was the Nissan Leaf.
So let's go back to basics.
Yep.
It's a salary sacrifice scheme. And if you don't have this benefit in place, consumers do have the option to personal lease.
They do.
But what is the main difference between a salary sacrifice scheme and a personal leasing from a financial perspective?
You're absolutely right. Salary sacrifice is an elective scheme, so no one has to join, but it's about how do we get those messages out to employers and employees that what are the benefits, financial benefits, as you quite rightly mentioned. So the first and foremost is that because it's via a salary sacrifice arrangement, that means that someone is going to reduce their salary before tax and national insurance is deducted from their salary. So you're kind of using the majority of the salary sacrifice and gaining all the tax and NI efficiencies. So for a 20% taxpayer, they're going to save 28% from the gross reduction. So all of that is cost efficiency. 40% taxpayer, 42%, and a higher rate at 47%. So that's before you kind of start even looking at what else you get. So first thing we'd always recommend someone go out, if you want to look at a personal lease, then compare it to the salary sacrifice scheme, and you want to look at what the net impact is. So not the gross, because the gross is being taken out before tax and NI. You want to look at what the net impact is each month, and then take into account you've got no deposit, no credit check, that you are not within the salary sacrifice arrangement. It's an all-inclusive company car provision ultimately. So lots of people never have had a company car because they wouldn't have potentially been eligible. So that what they're getting within that arrangement is a whole host of sort of fully inclusive motoring package.
And I think as well, there's so many different leasing companies out there. You don't even know where to start half the time. And I think when you've got a salary sacrifice scheme provided by your company, you know that it's one that you can trust.
Absolutely. I mean, it is that reputational benefit. And then on top of kind of the inclusive package and the tax efficiencies, I mean, it is a company car, so you are going to pay company car tax or benefit in kind on the benefit. But as I mentioned before, the government have the Road to Zero strategy where we can see right up to 2030 now what that looks like. Any modelling or quotes will always include in that net impact whatever the benefit in kind implication is as well. But you're also, because it is a corporate scheme, your employer's providing it, you're actually getting the benefit, as we mentioned, of no deposits, no credit check, which is just convenience. But you're getting corporate manufacturer discounts. So if you imagine, Tusker, we're negotiating hard with manufacturers to make sure that we get the very best deal for our employees.
And that's what I was going to ask next. So are all schemes the same?
No. So, in principle, a salary sacrifice scheme operates the same way from one provider to another in terms of the mechanism, but it is trying to understand what is that all-inclusive view, what are the risk protections, what does that really look like? So, I would honestly say they're not all the same, and you want to kind of make sure that employers really understand how it operates, what support you're going to get, but actually down to the fine print of what are the differences between what, for example, Tusker are offering versus whether it be another, a competitor, or whether it be a different type of scheme.
And one thing for me, and it's when I'm speaking to clients, and it is normally those questions around what if somebody leaves, what if somebody goes on maternity leave, and the one thing that I can 100% confidently say is that Tusker's risk protection management is amazing, and that once they've gone through it, that client that is looking to it feels so much more comfortable because they were a bit more worried about implementing it due to those risks that can happen.
And that's totally understandable, because for it to work, the employer is providing the employee with a company car in return for a reduction in their salary. So that means it's a business-to-business arrangement. And then there's an arrangement employer to employee that kind of subsequently, yes, means that the employee is agreeing to all these things. But the reality is, as an employee could be signing up anywhere between 2 and 5 years. You don't know what necessarily is around the corner. So they are understandably going to, as an employer, is going to want to understand all of those consequences, and they know their employees better than most as to the sorts of things that might happen. So Tusker we've been operating these schemes now for 16 years, right from the start, started with a risk mitigation proposition. Because how do you've got to make sure that employers should have a cost neutral scheme as a minimum. And then, of course, they will make savings. They could choose to pass those across or keep them. But ultimately, they don't want to have that risk, sort of open to them as an employer. And the thing we've always found is that this doesn't just protect the employer. It's actually about protecting an employee as well, so that they can come into the scheme with confidence and know, actually, if their circumstances do change, they're not going to be on the hook for significant early termination costs.
And I know you just mentioned it slightly then, but probably a big question is, how much does it actually cost to set up?
So from an employer's perspective, with Tusker, absolutely nothing. It is a cost it's free to implement. We are able to be really flexible around how we structure that scheme. So employers might set their own rule sets, and that can include whether they want to retain their savings, because, of course, the gross reduction is taken, as I mentioned, prior to tax and national insurance contributions. Therefore, that means, as an employer, they're saving Class 1 national insurance on the salary that's been sacrificed. Some choose to share that. Some choose to retain. The structure of that scheme can be set up to generate savings or just remain cost neutral.
Another question I get is where majority of organisations have obviously got a cycle to work scheme.
Yep.
So what I think they automatically do is go, oh, well, it's set up exactly the same as a cycle to work scheme, where we have to purchase the bike up front.
Yep.
When actually that is not the case.
It is not. It is the provision of a company car. The title, remains with the leasing company, so we are the vehicle owner as such. There is no passing a title either to the employer or the employee.
I hear you're going to share some really interesting numbers with us today in regards to carbon emissions. Could you just tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so As part of our initiative since about 2012, we introduced carbon offsetting on tailpipe emissions for the salary sacrifice car benefit scheme, really to help with that ESG agenda. As we've transitioned massively over the years to pure electric vehicles, which of course don't have any tailpipe emissions, we have also introduced, and again a couple of years ago, introduced the carbon offsetting to charge those electric vehicles. Those stats as such around that, the carbon that we've offset across both UK and global projects can be reported on, which means that your customers can actually have tangible evidence around how they have reduced carbon for their own ESG reporting as part of, no doubt, their annual submission. Pluxee clients have saved 12.5 thousand tonnes of carbon across the period.
That's incredible that we've been able to carbon offset that through all of our Pluxee clients. I think it's really crucial, as we're aware, that we can give tangible evidence to our own employees, again, helping them to make a sustainable impact on their employees, their environment, their community, and that is something that is what Pluxee is about and where our future is and where we're going. A common misconception we hear is that people believe that these schemes are only for large private corporates, and councils, public sector bodies would struggle to fund a scheme. Given what you've told us, this isn't the case.
No, not at all. So you do tend to find that that some organisations, some companies will only want to work with organisations of a specific size. And that's because if you're going to implement a scheme, you clearly, it's the same process that we go through, whether it's a small SME or a really large scheme to some extent. But Tusker committed through our partners, and clearly Pluxee being a long-term partner, that we wouldn't be so prescriptive, that actually all of your clients have access to set up a salary sacrifice car scheme. So that's our commitment, and we have a specific resource internally that is responsible for working with SME, just to make sure that they get exactly the same fully comprehensive implementation. We have a sales support team, and we also have an account management team that literally are used to working with SME. Yeah, as well as, of course, all the big schemes as well, but just different teams for specific functions around making sure that everybody gets the right attention.
And I think that will be music to HR managers' ears, to be honest, because I think our job at Pluxee, your job at Tusker, is to ultimately make their life easier. And again, with all of that support and customer care that you provide, it means that an employer isn't going to be getting millions of questions about cars, and actually they can come directly to you and you're there to support.
Very much. I mean, the whole purpose here is that we're providing benefits and that those should be suitably outsourced. It should be, a benefit that is a win-win. It costs nothing to set up. They can make savings if they want to, but ultimately their employees are getting a great deal and a great service. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't mean that there's no admin, because with any benefit, unfortunately, we can't take money out of people's salaries before tax and NI. But we've really streamlined to make those processes as straightforward, and also push, what I call push process, which rather than someone remembering to have to do something, we utilise a push process, which will ask and say, can you authorise these salary sacrifice applications, for example, make sure that they're eligible, they're comfortable with those employees coming into the scheme.
So I think a question every business owner would love to hear is, What's the most money you've saved an organisation through a salary sacrifice?
Well, I mean, I think the metric we would use, because size makes a
Obviously
considerable
difference in cars as well.
So so within corporate sector, typically you're looking at £1,000 employer saving per car per annum.
Wow.
So somebody that's say 30 for an SME, they get 30 people that come into the scheme. You're talking over a typical arrangement, so sort of actually sits at sort of 3 to 4 years. You're easily talking over £100,000 that's going to be generated from the scheme, and hopefully not having to do an awful lot for it. That does mean that, of course, for example, our largest customer at the moment has around 2,000 vehicles on the scheme, and the savings for them, I mean, we are talking millions per annum, 2 million per annum. So tangible savings. So it's scalable. And then you move into the public sector arena, where most of those organisations will be making pension savings. And then you're looking at around £2,000 saving per car or per employee per annum. So, you can start to kind of do the maths then and get excited about it.
When you say that, it's a no-brainer to implement a scheme like this, obviously with all the benefits of the service, but actually being able to have that money to reinvest into your employees in other ways to support them is massive, especially when budgets are tight.
And does make a difference,
Yeah.
Especially if you look at public sector, where budgets are stringent. For an NHS trust or for a council, that is a tangible saving, as you say, which can be put into all sorts of different initiatives or bodies, around headcount.
It's great to hear how much employers can save, but do they also have to accept the financial risk?
So we touched really briefly on how it's structured, because it is a business-to-business arrangement. So the salary sacrifice provider, in this instance us, would be leasing the vehicles to the employer. The employee then agrees to vary their terms and conditions through a salary sacrifice arrangement. And that does mean that the employer, we're billing them each month, they're paying us an invoice each month, but taking at the same time the reductions from salary, so nice flow. But of course, as you said, it is about what happens when people resign, get made redundant, where they might retire, they may have babies and not be at work, or maybe long-term sickness. Of course, those are the responsibilities that they're thinking about, because they're thinking early terminations. Of course, there's going to be a cost because it's an underlying finance agreement, that's been set up to go across a 3 or 4 year period. If it doesn't go that far, then of course, as you would with a personal lease, for example. So that's why these protections are built in, as they've been operating those for many, many years, and enhancing them over those years as well, really to just make those financial obligations for both employee and employer very transparent around what is and isn't included, what would those consequences be. And in the majority of all the scenarios that we've mentioned, I mentioned earlier, those are protected life events.
Given the upcoming employer national insurance increases, it sounds like a green car salary sacrifice scheme will only benefit employers even more. So giving them the capacity to reduce the impact of the higher wage bill, how do you see the scheme progressing?
I think, the maths will work even better for an employer. We may see that does generate them looking to pass more savings over to the employee, because, of course, if you're passing some of your savings to the employee, that's going to make it more cost effective, which typically makes it look more attractive, which typically makes you have more employees that join. So the math kind of works out that although you're saving per month might reduce because you've got more people coming into the scheme, that you'll overall save more as an employer if you're choosing to share. So we're seeing real popularity. That's really increasing, and hopefully does help soften, a blow.
And I think it's a really good time to be doing this podcast based on that increase that's happening, because we want to obviously make employers aware even more so that how they can kind of try and reduce that as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I think having that real visibility now to 2030 to see how, what we're looking to do here is transition employees into a greener, less polluting vehicle. And with the incentives that are in place till 2030, that is only going to help.
So what level of support can an employer expect when they take on a green car scheme?
As much support as they would with any outsourced provision, which is the fact that we are looking to take the noise away from the employer. It's a one number, fully supported process for employees, both through our fantastic website that the employees have access to, but also it's about being able to have a conversation with somebody. So the platform's great, get lots of information, lots of tools to help you look at you EV ready, what's the ZAP map infrastructure around you, how much you're going to save on fuel each month by going to an electric vehicle. So all those tools, but ultimately voices and people at the end of a phone or an email.
So when we talk about duty of care, an employer does have a duty of care. Having a Tusker green car scheme, and I say Tusker because of what's included. What is included in within each salary sacrifice agreement an employee takes, so it can give the reassurance to the employer?
Within our scheme, you'll have vehicle of your choice for a term or mileage of your choice. You'll have servicing, you have maintenance, you'll have roadside assistance, relief vehicle, you'll have accident management, you'll have motor insurance, fully comprehensive motor insurance, risk protection is in there, MOT, all tyres replaced within the scheme. So really trying to kind of give that absolute sort of elite, I guess, convenience of having everything at one. Us at the end of the telephone, puncture, they're in an accident, they're broken down, they just need a ring, and they get all that lovely handhold all the way through, as well as we know, taking away for employees with financial well-being. So easy for people to come out of kilter. It doesn't take a lot to just be unlucky, have 2 punctures in, 2 weeks. You're talking a lot of money that's suddenly paid out. So we really, from the outset, I don't think people see that benefit so much, but in life, man, I can tell you employees really value it.
And I think that is something when employees are going out to look at cars, it's really something to keep in mind when you're doing that comparison with salary sacrifice scheme and a personal lease, because obviously you would not probably have all of that included in your personal leasing. So it's really should keep that in mind when you are shopping about and having a look. We know employer value proposition is essential for talent attraction, retention, and we know that it improves an employee financial well-being. We know that the scheme is very popular among the clients and employees that we provide. It is a big ticket benefit. So if you see job adverts on LinkedIn, online, and you see that section where it says, what do you get for working here? You would always like to try and see if there was a green car scheme included. I think it's definitely a big tick when you're looking out in the market. And also, I think if you've already got a car as well through Tusker, it would be really beneficial if the company that they're looking to go to has this in place as well.
Without a doubt. Salary sacrifice schemes have increased in popularity. We run 2,700, I think, off the top of my head. Salary sacrifice card benefit schemes, lots, the provision of it across other organisations has been increased. So without a doubt, employees have a focus on benefits now. It's not just the salary and the job. They want to see what else they're getting, whether that be pensions or cars. And as you mentioned, it's a big ticket, it's a big number. So we definitely see retention as a key attraction for employers. From our perspective, we see around 73% of people that have had a green car or car on the scheme go into another car. So that's, for me, the retention stat, because it's quite significant.
Studies show that companies with CSR commitments experience higher employee satisfaction, loyalty, improved retention. So when employees obviously see an employer caring for the environment, supporting the good causes, creating a healthy work environment, they obviously feel connected, boost morale kind of across the board. And as we all know, happy employees are productive employees, and if I'm honest, everybody knows when you get that brand new car feeling for months or even a year. When you go and sit in that car, you're like, yes, this is mine. But it really, by having it been provided through the green car scheme, it really boosts that employer loyalty. What kind of new initiatives do you have to make the scheme even more inclusive?
So from our perspective, we want to make sure that most employees can choose a car. We are stuck by national living wage restrictions, which of course is HMRC rule set. So you have to provide entry level for 20% taxpayers, in particular lower earners, affordable cars. As we mentioned earlier, it's all about getting those great discounts and seeing a car come in at a lower level. So we've been looking at wider initiatives around inclusivity. So this year we introduced 5-year arrangements, which of course is managing depreciation over a longer term, so making it more affordable. And we've also introduced, which will be rolled out in full in the new year, is pre-loved, so used vehicles basically being taken on the scheme as well. So we've been doing trial sets for the last 3 months, and engagement level is very good.
And I know everybody at Pluxee is super excited for...
When?
So I think you get asked all the time, like, when is it happening? When is it happening? And it's something we're all excited about. I mean, I don't think I'm still going to be able to get a electric Porsche, but it's kind of...
Unfortunately, most Porsche drivers don't give them back early.
No, but it's something that we are... so excited about. I think it's going to make the scheme even more popular. I think don't tell me off for this, but I have already mentioned it to a couple of clients that it's coming, and it's definitely kind of a big kind of game changer in terms of where the scheme is going. And
more choice, definitely. Yeah.
Ali, thanks for part 1.
Pleasure.
And thank you for listening. We hope we've answered all those niggling questions that you might have around the Green Car Scheme. Check out part 2 of this podcast, where we will answer all questions your employees may have for you.
Join us next time to discover how Pluxee UK is putting the X in success, enhancing employee engagement and making work not just a place to be, but a place to belong.